Good morning, everybody. I really want to welcome you to our Greater Philadelphia Veterans Network How to Hire Veterans program. As Olivia said, I'm Sean Ellsworth. I'm an Army brat. I'm an Army veteran. I'm the father of an Army veteran at this point in my life, and it's my privilege to chair the GPVN board. On behalf of the board, our founder and executive director, Alex, our employers council, and our staff, Olivia, thank you for joining today's session. The Greater Philadelphia Veterans Network's mission is to serve veterans, to continue equipping them for their life of service to this great nation, our communities, and to their families, really through programs like this one this morning, like Shark Tank coming up, our Veterans Business Referral Network, and other programs that you'll hear a little bit more about later in the program. The How to Hire Veterans program, sponsored here by the Employers Council of GPVN, is an annual event. Thank you for joining this year's. We've had past events focused on things like how to hire veterans virtually 2 years ago, how to hire senior enlisted and senior officers into your organization, and how to hire veterans demystifying PTSD, just to name a few. And really we're about, as the slide says, helping veterans and employers engage and grow in their relationships and network building. And the mission of the Employers Council is to help veterans and employers come together and foster those types of relationships that result in jobs for our veterans. The other task I have here this morning, and it's my privilege to do so as well, is to introduce our special speaker, the Honorable Patrick Murphy. Patrick started serving this country at the age of 19 when he entered the ROTC program at the University of Scranton. I'm sure Pat and I would both agree the best officers come out of ROTC programs. He served this country as a soldier, as the first Iraq War veteran elected to Congress, and as Undersecretary and Acting Secretary of the Army. And as you'll hear in a moment, his continued passion as a champion for veterans in this community, the Greater Philadelphia area, and also throughout the country. Patrick, thank you for being with us today.
It's good to be with you guys. You can hear me okay, right? Mic check.
Loud and clear. Loud and clear.
Awesome. Listen, it's great to be with everybody. I appreciate everyone going. I appreciate that introduction to everyone that has joined us today. I appreciate what you do for our military, especially during these defining moments in our country's history. I have to give a shout out to the founder, Alex Archowski. Alex, I know I talked to you about an hour ago, and appreciate you coming on board, even though you're out in Las Vegas and it's 5:30 or something. That time I called you coming back from the gym this morning. I think I woke you up, but I apologize about that. But appreciate your leadership and all that you do for the Greater Philadelphia Veterans Network. My battle buddy at the U.S. Chamber of Commerce, Mona Dexter's here. I know she's on the panel following me. Mona is a great American. That really highlights the sacrifices that all our military families do every time. And we have over 30% unemployment rate with military spouses. So there's a lot of work for us to do. And then the board chair, Erica Webster from Dub Fitness. She's one of the most inspirational leaders that I know. So I am calling in from household 6 here in Bristol, Bucks County, Pennsylvania. It is a great day to be an American. It's great to be with all of you. And I know we have a phenomenal panel following me, so I'm going to keep it short and sweet. The SkillBridge program is one of the most unique ways to really kickstart a relationship of being a veteran-ready employer. A veteran-ready employer isn't just a veteran-friendly employer. It is an employer that it is doing everything they can to be part of the solution. When you have the longest wars in American history that just wrapped up, over 2 decades of service in combat, we've asked less than 1% of America to serve, a little over 3 million families. They've done this on multiple deployments. And 78% of our military come from military families. So, I know my dad and uncle served in Vietnam. My dad served during Vietnam. My older brother has done deployments overseas after 9/11. I've done two. And we've asked this less than 1% to serve time and time again. But veterans do an incredibly important job when they come home as civic assets to this nation. When they serve, it is not just serving their teams and companies and corporations across America, which they do phenomenally. You don't have to teach them about teamwork, about mission first, about showing up on time, being dressed appropriately, getting along with your teammates, no matter what differences they might have in sex, sexual orientation, race, religion, ethnicity, because they served in hostile environments and tough environments with folks that they don't necessarily believe all that they believe, but they all believe in the United States of America. They all wore that cloth of our country. So one of the unique ways, and there's a lot of different ways to partner and not just recruit these great young Americans into your organizations, but it's also, we're going to talk a lot about SkillBridge in a second, but there's a lot of different ways to do it. Mona Dexter from the Chamber of Commerce could talk to you about the Corporate Fellows Program. I know we have Reverend Dr. Paul McCullough, who's the president of AUSA, the Association of United States Army. He had a great golf tournament yesterday at Ron Jaworski's golf outing in Downingtown yesterday. But these folks, they do everything possible to set companies up to put them in the right position, because we want this always to be a win-win, not just hiring veterans to check a box, but hiring veterans to make sure they succeed. I know I have devoted a lot of my life post-military, post-Pentagon, in investing in veteran businesses. I think that's incredibly important. When you look at some of the most iconic global brands, Comcast, Nike, Walmart, Enterprise Car Rental, Ralph Lauren, they were all started by veterans coming back from World War II. It was about 49% of veterans, about half, came back from World War II and started their own small business and created these global iconic companies that are phenomenal. But every generation, Fred Smith, FedEx after Vietnam, every generation goes and does that. But instead of half our veterans after Iraq or Afghanistan starting a small business, it's about 5% of my generation that has done that. I've been in the trenches as a co-founder of WorkMark, where we host a lot of these Greater Philadelphia Veterans Network. John New is a great Army officer. That's the CEO and co-founder of that entity. And through my venture capital company, Starting Out Group, we've invested over $20 million in 49 companies that are veteran, including WorkMark and a lot of others. So I devote my time doing that, just investing in it. I teach entrepreneurship at the Wharton Business School. But we're here today about how you could partner and your allies in this. If you're from a company perspective, how you could learn more about SkillBridge, how you can learn more about the Corporate Fellows Program, or just be part of the mix. On SkillBridge, and if I could spend some time there, one of the companies I advise is called ServiceNow. ServiceNow is one of the up-and-coming tech companies. They just had a great week in the stock market. They're about an $8 billion a year company. One of the local leaders in our region is Dan Coons, who's a former Army officer with the 75th Innovation Command. Went to Widener Law School like I did. He's a great American, but they're crushing it on the tech side. But they are very, very active when it comes to the SkillBridge program. I speak to their fellows in SkillBridge. Herb Thompson is a former Special Forces guy who he might be joining us today. I did send him the link and he gave me his thoughts when I was preparing for today. But he thinks the SkillBridge program is an absolute force multiplier. It allows these folks to work on your teams, to get the certifications and requirements that they might need. That so as they work on your teams and be part of them, it's a trial for both of you. But it's also a way for them to on day one, if they do come in, it's a way for them to hit the ground running. So I'm a huge, and I know we're going to go into detail on the panel, but I'm a huge fan of SkillBridge. I've seen it work for so many companies, and not just ServiceNow, but many more. And I will tell you, I have a friend who runs Justice for Veterans. It's a veterans court across America. Her name is Melissa Fitzgerald. And before she took that job, she said, well, Patrick, I don't know if I should apply for this. I'm not a veteran. And I said, Melissa, you should absolutely do it, because we've asked us 1% of America to serve, but to make sure that we take care of these folks, to make sure that we lead by that ethic, that we leave no one behind. We need the 99% of America to step up and be part of the solution. So I know, even companies like Comcast, General Carol Eggert, I'm a huge fan. She does work, but even her colleague who's not a veteran, Eileen Murphy, I'm not sure if she's on today or not, but she's done a ton of stuff as a non-veteran, helping our veterans get hired, helping our veterans be retained, and helping our veterans succeed. I will tell you, when you look at the stats of our veterans, if at the company level, it should be part of your DEI efforts, diversity, equity, inclusion efforts, and also your ESG efforts as well, because veterans, as you know, are 42% people of color. They're federally protected class. I mentioned earlier, Lauren Dexter, who's a military spouse, but it's over 30% unemployment rate with their military spouses. You understand that most American families are dual income families. And the fact is that when you have almost a third of military families, spouses that are employed, because they've been household six is what we call military, and these multiple deployments every 2-3 years, they're, what we call a PCS, a permanent change of station, when you have to move. They have to get up and go, but they are great workers. They're great civic assets in this nation. And I'll say one last thing about being a civic asset, not just for companies, but also for our society. Like most veterans on this call and part of this panel, we get really ticked off when folks try to victimize the American veteran. All those poor veterans, look, they're homeless, they're suicidal, all that stuff. And again, we have that ethic that we leave no one behind. But veterans are civic assets to this nation. Veterans are more likely to be employed than non-veterans. They're more likely to start a small business, and for that small business to be successful than non-veterans, because they have that entrepreneurial spirit. Veterans are more likely to vote in elections, no matter what their political persuasion. In fact, they're most likely to be independents, because we're not political in the military, we're apolitical, in fact. Veterans are more likely to be little league coaches and pastors in their churches. They're more likely, when they go and join your companies or corporate America, to go through the ranks at a quicker rate. So you have folks like Alex Swirsky, who's a local guy who he started as an Army Ranger, was a West Point graduate, left the military, went to Wharton, and then worked for Johnson & Johnson. Worked for Janssen at first, and then has been leading Johnson & Johnson as the executive chairman and the CEO, and is just a phenomenal American that lives here in Bucks County. So I say all those things because, this isn't a charity initiative. This isn't just to do the right thing. This isn't, as I said earlier, just to check the box. This is something that we need you to do, to find out more about SkillBridge, to find out more about the Corporate Fellows Program, to find out more about things like the Association of American Graduates, Association of the United States Army, or the Greater Philadelphia Veterans Network. We appreciate you being here. For many of you, I know I'm preaching to the choir, and we got to get out there to the congregation. And I say that as the former Altar Boy of the Year in St. Anselm's in 1987. But I say that in all sincerity, and that we need to do more and all redouble our efforts. And we have someone like Alex Arkowski who's out there at the Military Influencer Conference, and it's dark 30 out there in Las Vegas, but he's still here with us. That just shows you how important it is to all of us and what more that we can do. So with that, I'll turn it back over to the rest of the team. It's been an honor to be part of this effort. I look forward to hearing. I'm going to stick on for a little bit, the next panel. But if I can do anything to be helpful, please don't hesitate to reach out. You can reach me at Patrick Murphy PA on social media, or my email is patrick@patrickjmurphy.com. God bless all of you. Thanks for doing all that you do, and I hope to see you all in person soon. Have a great day.
Thank you so much for your words this morning. Now we're going to move into our panel portion. So I would like to introduce our founder, Alex Arkowski. Alex will be our moderator this morning. Alex, take it on.
Thank you. One of the first, Pat, if you're on, I want to say a huge thank you. Without your leadership and inspiration, we're lucky to have you in Philly. There's no doubt. I just want to make sure that everybody knows too, that deep down inside, because of Pat's, history with his family, he does say, "Go Navy, beat Army" first. Just so you
Go Army, beat
Yeah.
Navy. Go
Just-
Army, beat Navy, brother.
Right, just because you forgot the All-American team, I just needed to make sure. There's a friendly banter in here. There's always a banter that at the end he leaves his signature mark, but he forgot one today. So I had to say, "Go Navy, beat Army" because he forgot it. Right. So either way, we'll be rooting the Fighting Phils together on there. So Pat, thank you for your leadership, continued collaboration. Thanks for leading from the front, making our community a great place in the Philadelphia region, and inspiring others to take it to the next level on there. So I want to kind of introduce myself to kick it over to the panel. From there, I've had the pleasure of serving as the executive director for over 10 years with great people, great volunteers, great people like Olivia, Sean Ellsworth, and just a lot of collaboration partners that are on here, and then others that are not on here. It takes a village. It really takes a village to build our community, to grow our community. So the foundation was really about it's called the economic journey of our veterans in Philadelphia. And what happens is in the veteran space, the veterans really talk in echo chambers. So what happens is when I got out 2 times, I saw that we really just spoke to each other. We didn't speak to the community. So how do we get a community engagement was programs like this, chambers, rotaries, you name them, all these non-veteran entities that we need to say, how do you engage with us? Let's localize it. Higher ed, you name them, Villanova, Temple, Drexel, community colleges. All those are important for the livelihood of the success of our veterans. So it takes a lot of people to collaborate to all these missions. And this mission in particular is a piece to, as we say, bridge the gap, is how do employers engage? We've done programs like Take an Employer to Base Day. It's not a boss lift. It's really allowing the employers to touch and feel the different ranks, to understand enlisted, an officer. They always say, if I saw what they did, I'd better understand how to hire. So we've taken them to the base. We've had everybody, like I said, from Vanguard to Comcast to Enterprise to Wawa. They've all come to the bases to see what they're hiring, to better understand, a veteran in finance, a veteran in supply, a veteran in logistics. It's really allowing them to better hire and interview during those processes. And then for Employers Council with our volunteers, it's just allowing us to really make sure that we hit all the check marks. One of our best programs was 2 of them. Rest in peace, Justin Constantine, who was really a big piece of our success in the veteran space. He's the one that came in to talk about how to hire veterans with PTSD, demystifying PTSD. We did this in 2019. We had a good turnout of employers to understand what mental health was, how to support veterans that are hired. But it's not just veterans, it's everybody else. We told everybody. It's just really, it's an area of how do you support the person once that they're hired through that journey. We've done Wounded Warriors, we've done how to hire student vets, we've done how to hire National Guard. So today is really, really a great one because we've had interest from local employers, and I'm really honored to have our panel here to share their history and where they are and the success that they're having and the challenges and how to. So if anything, I want to make sure that everybody gets enough information and also allow people to circle back. We have the contacts of everybody if everybody wants to do one-on-one conversations to pick people's brain on all this. So without further ado, I'm just going to go to the panel virtually here in no specific order, just to do a brief introduction of yourself and your organization. And Mona, if you don't mind just kicking things off.
Sure. Thanks, Alex. Well, first of all, Alex, thank you for inviting me to participate. It's great to be here with you from another part of the West Coast, first thing in the morning. But love the Philadelphia community. It's such a great model of just strength and really bridging that divide. So have really enjoyed working with you and the team across Philly over the years. And again, thank you, Patrick, for kicking it off. Patrick is also an ambassador for our program. So I'll get to my own introduction. So I'm Mona Dexter. I am Chief of Staff and Vice President of Hiring Our Heroes. It's a workforce development program of the United States Chamber of Commerce Foundation. We are based in Washington, D.C., but our program program is nationwide and really globally. Again, our mission is twofold, and that's number one, as part of the largest business federation in the world, we are helping businesses really diversify and strengthen their workforces and understand the value of military connected talent. And at the same time, we are working with the military community to prepare them to either enter, re-enter, or upskill for, or skill into the workforce. To the points that Alex was speaking of earlier, it's really about diversifying the employment opportunities and improving economic opportunity for veterans post-service, but the military families at large. So I've spent over 20 years as a military spouse. I'm an Army mom, all Army, so sticking to the Army theme here. And again, this is, it's just been such incredible work to not just work on a national and global program that's really improving employment outcomes for the military community, but also work at the grassroots level, especially with a community like Philly. So thank you.
Thank you, Mona. I know you've come to our city multiple times, and we'll still welcome you back, even though you said go Army. So that's okay.
I appreciate it. I'll be there Veterans Day
no
weekend.
Problem. We'll
so.
just give you the different address next time. No, but and any sense, Mona, if you could drop your information as well in the chat of any kind of links or resources as well. I meant to say that in the beginning. That would be helpful for a lot of our community of where they can find this information of where you're coming from on that. Mona's been a great leader, really looking to see what the chamber does, how we implement things at the local level, and this is one of those as well. So, and then when they come into town, we try to collaborate with a lot of organizations as well. So we'll pick everybody up next time they're in town for one of their events. We'll get all together. So going down the list, just going to no specific order, we got Kieran here with Zero Eyes. Kieran, if you don't mind giving an intro, background, and yourself, and I think you're on mute.
You guys hear me okay?
Perfect.
All right, cool. So, hey, thanks, Alex. Kieran Carroll, I work for a company called Zero Eyes. We're a Philadelphia software company founded by former military veterans. We started as 7 guys in the basement back in 2018. We're about 130 people today. More than half the company's a veteran. We've made numerous SkillBridge hires over the last year. We really believe in the program. My particular background, as a Navy officer for about 10 years, spent most of my time in or around special operations. Did a few years as a reservist, went and worked in consulting after I transitioned the second time, got an MBA, and then made my way over to Zero Eyes right after we sort of launched the company back in 2018.
Thanks, Kieran. And just a side story of how our community is and how we know each other. Zero Eyes pitched at our Shark Tank in 2017 or 18 as a startup. Look where they are now. They're crushing it nationally, and as well as setting off a SkillBridge program. Just to identify, you don't have to have a Fortune 500 logo to really start the SkillBridge program, and that's really where we are, kind of explaining what kind of company do you need, top, large company, medium size, small size, how you can do this. And thanks for joining us. With us today is also the CEO and founder of Ally Construction, John Pekarsky. John.
Good morning, everybody. Go Navy, just for the record. Hey, everybody. Thank you very much to GPVN for having me. This is very exciting. SkillBridge has been awesome. We'll get into some of that stuff, but just to tell you a little bit about myself. My name is John Pekarsky. I'm the president of Ally Construction. We are a certified veteran-owned business. I started the business 5 years ago. I actually purchased the asset from Jones Lang LaSalle in Philadelphia. I ran their construction division for 5 years. At the time, I had 14 team members come over. Right now, we sit with 45 team members in the company. 25% of my workforce are veterans, and 26% of my workforce are from underrepresented groups. Just to kind of highlight what Patrick talked about, a lot of our diversity as a company is within the ranks as well. And it's important, especially in the world that we live in corporate America, where ESG and diversity is an extremely important component of dollars spent. Just a little bit about myself. I'm a Navy veteran, as you guys might imagine. I served from 91 to 95. I'm a plank owner on the USS George Washington, which is a Nimitz class aircraft carrier commissioned down in Virginia. Our business itself, so Ally Construction, is an at-risk construction management firm. We do not self-perform work, but we take on all the risk with regards to the contract between the owner and the subcontractors. A lot of our work, most of our work, is done within the Fortune 500 space. Our clients, our biggest client just recognized us as their Veteran Business Partner of the Year in the diverse category, and that's Merck Pharmaceuticals. We've done a lot of work with them. We work with Bristol Myers Squibb and all the large real estate services firms. SkillBridge for us is a really important part of our growth, and we'll get into that with some of the questions that I know that we have coming up. So thank you again very much, and I will drop my information in there so anybody can reach out to me directly. We have some really good experience with the hiring SkillBridge as well. So thank you.
Great. Thanks, John. So let's get right into it. Mona, I think it just makes more sense just to start with you and what was the purpose? How did SkillBridge get started, and what was the overall goal? How did it come to fruition? We've been in the veteran space for so many years, but all of a sudden there was SkillBridge. How did it all come together?
Well, Alex, if you think about why the GI, kind of the evolution of the GI Bill, there were going to be masses of veterans returning from service and not necessarily the right number or not necessarily a matching number of jobs or places for them to go. So the GI Bill was established to essentially not just open access to higher education, but also prepare veterans for the workforce through education. And SkillBridge is really the same concept. So in 2011, to really address the concerns about, a large number of U.S. military personnel returning to civilian life following the financial crisis of 2008, SkillBridge was established to really provide pathways into what were the current needs of the workforce. So it's kind of, you could say it's kind of a version of the GI Bill in terms, in the parallel that it was really it was providing training into now, the roles that were needed now. But it's really evolved. So it started off as really more what we think of as kind of labor force jobs, and really more, what we think of as kind of like the skilled trades. It's our program at Hiring Our Heroes was established in 2015 because there was an identified gap in the populations that were served, but also the workforce needs. And so our SkillBridge program was established to really fill more of the mid to senior level career roles in corporate America. And really at the end of the day, regardless of whether it was skills training or going into more of the trades or going into more of the corporate roles, as our program is called the Corporate Fellowship Program, it was really an internship style to really right size the role and get past a confusing resume or not understanding who this person was. It was really getting to know the person through experiential learning, on the job training, and making sure that employment was right sized while acquiring the necessary skills along the way.
Well, great. Well, thank you very much for that. And how many years has it been rolled out right now officially?
We're at about 11 years with SkillBridge now. And again, the program has evolved immensely. And then again, at Hiring Our Heroes, ours was established in 2015. And, to John and Kieran's point of how it's just grown explosively and been so successful, we started our particular program at Joint Base Lewis McChord with 14 service members in 2015. And now we're closing out 2022 with our third cohort of the year. And this year we will have had over 1,000 service members go through the program nationwide. And it's not just service members from bases around the country. We have service members participating from bases overseas. They are authorized to go TDY to different locations in the country, or they can participate virtually depending on the employer.
Great. To go into a little detail, Kieran and John, I'll jump to you guys in a second, just to give kind of a, another version of the SkillBridge, right? How would you compare it if people have never heard about it? How would you compare this program for somebody? People think about internship, Mona, and they think about, how do they compare this? Walk us through, the increment part of setting it up, of what pieces are in place there that people need to do to have a successful SkillBridge. And this is for you, Mona, as well.
Sorry, I was finding the mute button because
No,
Zoom
no, no
hides
worries,
that
no worries.
bar. There are a couple ways to do it. I mean, if you're going to be your own SkillBridge provider, that does require approval through Department of Defense. And let's be honest, no Department of Defense process, no federal process is just, fill out this form and you're done. It is lengthy, but for good reason. So it's just making sure that you fully understand the requirements to be an approved SkillBridge provider and what those DoD requirements are. So it's having a full understanding of what is required to go through the full process. There are other avenues, and again, this is a little bit of a plug for HOH, obviously, but Hiring Our Heroes is an authorized SkillBridge provider, and especially for the small to medium-sized businesses where, it can be a little bit painstaking to go through the whole vetting process with DoD. Because we're an authorized SkillBridge provider, you do not have to go through that whole process. We essentially can facilitate SkillBridge on your behalf. And what that means is we do the full vetting of the service member. We make sure that they're eligible. We make sure that their paperwork is in place. And all we do is we vet the employers who come to us as host companies, and then we place the fellows with the host company. So it's whether you become the DoD SkillBridge provider, whether you do it through us, it's essentially try before you buy. It's risk-free. It's, there's no obligation to hire. It's having the open requisition at the end with the intent to hire. But if it's not a fit, that's understood on both sides. So again, it's really just making sure that, SkillBridge, it's just really understanding what the parameters of the program are, whether you choose to become your own, an authorized provider of your own, or use a backup provider, which is somebody like Hiring Our Heroes. And then really just understanding, who are the audiences, what do the demographics of the service members that you're looking to host actually, what are your needs, and does that match with the applicants that you're working with? So again, for us, historically, our programs have been really more mid to senior career level folks, because we were serving a demographic that originally was not being served by SkillBridge, but now that aperture has completely broadened to where any level of service member, has a SkillBridge opportunity, but it's right sizing your role. If you are looking to fill a high volume need for more labor force, then make sure that you are getting a pipeline of candidates that are going to be a match for those roles.
I appreciate that. That's great information. Thank you, Mona. So Kieran, I wanted to ask you and John, can you explain when your organization decided to implement the SkillBridge and program, and why? Why did you guys feel like it was necessary? And when did you guys start?
Sure. Yeah, I guess I can jump on that. We give everyone a little bit of background. We founded back in 2018, and we spent about 3 years doing traditional intern programs. So we partnered with universities in the area. We had undergrad interns, we had MBA interns from Penn and other schools. One of the problems that we kept finding is that it was really, really difficult to place somebody after an internship, particularly into a small technology startup. We found SkillBridge probably back, I think we became SkillBridge approved back in January, so it hasn't even been a full year for us. But SkillBridge has solved numerous problems on the hiring front. Getting active duty veterans into the company that have 3 to 6 months of a vetting period, where we as a company don't necessarily have to pay them at all. They're still getting paid by Department of Defense. Gives us an opportunity to really work with them and find better roles and actually build roles around their talents and skill sets, rather than bringing on 15 undergrad interns over the summer. By the time they're even ramped up, you're already halfway through the internship. Chances are, unless they're seniors, we're not really going to be able to bring them back into the company. SkillBridge for us is a way to vet someone really, really quickly, put them in, build a role around them once we like them and understand their background, and then hire them literally the minute that they separate from active duty. We've done that now probably 6 or 7 times in the last 2 or 3 months. We have a SkillBridge cohort right now of, I think, 5 or 6 folks. We're going to look to increase that as we sort of pick up steam at the company and more roles become available. Kick it over to John. Sorry, that was a long explanation.
No, that's great information. Before I go to you, John, one thing I did pick up though, Kieran, is, it sounds like you guys were already having a history of working with, I guess, internship model. And I guess this was kind of a replacement model or a supplement. Would that be safe to say? Or are you still doing internship, or have you used SkillBridge all entirely to supplement what you couldn't get?
We are largely SkillBridge now. We have a couple one-off interns, but as far as like a program goes, we basically killed off our traditional intern program in favor of SkillBridge. Okay.
Thank you. John, how about yourself? When did you get started, and why did you feel like it was going to be a good fit for you?
Yeah. Hey, Karen, great job, man. That's awesome to hear. You're doing a high turnover of people. So as I said, the reason, I'll tell you the reason is easy. So part of my overall philanthropic activities that I do personally and within Ally is focused around the veteran community. So, SkillBridge was a really easy thing. We do ACP mentorships as well within the company. So a lot of different things that we can kind of give back. SkillBridge came to light to me when it was brought to my attention by, we had a person who was our veteran initiative coordinator. She's since moved on and we're looking to backfill that role, but she had done some research, found out about it because she had recently transitioned, I'll say maybe 3 years back. She was Navy as well. Go Navy, another plug. And we just, for us as a construction company, there's a small pool of people that are out there in the civilian world to recruit. We don't recruit for finance and operations. We recruit for superintendents and project managers, people who build stuff. And all the military, every military branch has their own construction group, right? So, I went with the Navy first. So we started focusing on Navy Seabees to bring in construction guys who are already building stuff that may want to not work with their hands anymore, transition into a more supervisory or scheduling type of role, if that makes sense. So for us, it made a lot of sense to, one, help transitioning service members from where they are to at least get back locally to where they want to be, and for us to get the opportunity to see if culturally they are going to be cohesive with our group, because that really becomes one of the biggest things, is you get to see somebody over that period of time of how they're integrating with your team. And if they have more members of the community, the veteran community, which we do, they can integrate a lot easier. So far, we've had 2 SkillBridge interns, and both of them, I'm proud to say, have become full-time employees with Ally. So that's very exciting. We can probably do 1 or 2 SkillBridge interns, a quarter, I would say, just because of the volume of work that we do. We don't have a large program, as I said, but part of that other reasoning as to why is, so we've been notified we will be again a Platinum Medallion awardee this year for hired vets. And part of my goal is to get our workforce to 50%. And one of the ways to do that is to focus on where are people coming out of, which is where SkillBridge came into play. It's not our only recruiting solution, but it's one of our recruiting solutions that really helps. So what we've done is I now take that one step further, and I personally go to the recruiting events at the Naval NCB in Mississippi to meet with the people who are either transitioning anywhere from 2 years to 6 months, and letting them know that look us up, check us out if you want to transition. We're a DoD approved SkillBridge provider, to get repetition, to get the name out there, so that when people are coming back from deployment and they have 6 or 8 months and they're ready to relocate, or as we expand, as some of our plans are, they might be able to pick them up and place them in other geographical locations.
I appreciate that, John. Mona, one of the questions.
Alex, so we've been doing it since 2019. We've been an approved SkillBridge provider since 2019.
Okay. So just recently, it seems like a lot of people have come up. Mona, this is probably not one of the questions I put out there for you all in advance, but one of the questions I have is, I forgot to find out, is the mechanism is, how do the service members find out about this? So if the companies are doing X, how do the candidates, during the transition, finding out about this?
Well, ideally, they're finding out through their transition offices on their installations, but I can tell you that for us, the best source of outreach has been word of mouth. That's how our program has grown explosively, is so many service members were having such positive experiences with our program. And I'll speak to that by backing it up with some data points, in that over time, since we established in 2015, with the number of service members we've had go through the program, the job offer rate hovers right around 90%, and the average salary, and again, this is a national average salary, is over $100,000. It's about $103,000 right now. And so again, as veterans and part of the military community, you trust your peers. Who do you look to when you are looking for advice on something? You're going to look to your peer who has gone through how was their transition experience? What worked for them? So we find that they're primarily finding out by word of mouth, which again is great, but it's not ideal because it's not reaching the masses. It's reaching the small percentage who have had success with the program. So, we work to share more of that. One of the things that we do is we have an MOU with the Department of Defense that allows us to operate on the military bases. So we do have program managers who have office space on about 14 installations across the country, which isn't that many. But on the flip side, what we do is we host complimentary transition events that really supplement what the transition offices are doing for education and information sharing with the active duty members. And so we go to about 40 installations a year, see upwards of 40,000 service members, across these bases, and make sure that they all hear about SkillBridge and what that is. And, they could be anywhere from being 6 months into their first term of service to 3 weeks away from separation. So, we're getting them at every end of that service journey, but hopefully earlier versus later. I'm not sure what Kieran and John are seeing in terms of applications, but we're seeing applications coming in for cohorts in 2025, 2026. And we're thinking, you don't even know that you're really going to get out that year. But, there's just this urgency that they're feeling to make sure they get into this program because they've just heard such great things about it. So it's really exciting to see it grow.
No, that's fantastic here. First of all, I'm really happy to hear that. I think across the board, anybody will say, we've come a long way of the transition process of people taking initiative from the beginning. So to hear that people are now starting earlier, it gives comfort for our community to understand when are they getting started, when are the resources available, but also because of the way social media has blown up and a variety of different ways of word of mouth, it allows people to do their research in advance. So that's probably where they're going for 2025 and 2026. On there.
Absolutely.
I think one of the questions I wanted to ask everybody is, just the benefits of SkillBridge. If you say, the ROI on it, if you give me some examples, what are some of the benefits, Kieran and John, of, what you've seen on there, other than finding somebody, what does it do for your organization?
So I'll jump in. I actually, I look at it from my side, from an employer side, we have, one, I'm helping fellow vets, right? Soon to be vets transitioning, and it's a good program because they're getting an opportunity to also identify whether this is the right step for them, right? It's a two-way street on the analysis, right? They might want to be just out in the field running gear, and we're in a corporate environment, and that's not good for them. So it's for them as well. Secondly, for them, it helps them get closer to home and that transition, right? Without being kind of, hey, here's your ticket, go home, kind of like I got when I got out in 95. It wasn't wasn't as helpful, right? So you just kind of showed up and got out. And this gives a little bit more help to our society, our family, our brothers and sisters. For us as an employer, I mentioned earlier, it allows us to do a cultural analysis to see if that person is going to fit within our culture, because it's extremely important. Alex and I know each other a long time, and he knows the culture I built in my company and how important it is to me. So that's really, a valuable thing for both us and them to evaluate at a no cost, I'll say, right? It's so I think Mona said earlier, try before you buy, which is really a great opportunity because it's for both of us. They might not fit into our culture. And it also helps them with the civilian adjustment. Either way, whether they stay with us or not, it helps them to adjust to what that military was to what the civilian world life is. And, I mentioned I'm an ACP mentor. I recently was chatting with my current mentee, and he was explaining to me how much faster it is in the civilian world. He's a construction, he's working at a roofing company, and than it was when he was, doing stuff on the military side. So it's a lot of adjustments people get to go through. And if you can do that, where it's not just a culture shock, I find that that's very valuable. So, it's a benefit. It's a win-win situation. We say that a lot. You hear that a lot, but I do really believe in that. That's why we participate and have been for the last 3 years.
Great. Thank you, John. Kieran, how about yourself?
Yeah. I think for us, it's getting someone that is used to culture and mission over anything else. For those of you guys who don't really know what ZeroEyes does, we're a video analytic company that looks for visible firearms from existing security cameras, and the goal is to detect and prevent and mitigate the effects of gun violence or an active shooter. Veterans resonate with that mission really, really well. That's what we're looking for. We're a very high growth, we're a very ambiguous organization, as most Series A startups are. I think veterans bring a lot to the table, but one of the main things that they bring is they jump in and they figure it out, right? The amount of times I was told in the Navy, hey, just go figure it out, has prepared me pretty well for a startup where we don't know what the next 6 weeks are going to look like. The SkillBridge folks that we've worked with and that we've hired have in some way jumped in and figured it out. They've added value to the organization. A lot of them didn't even add, they were hired to do something else. They figured out a different avenue to add value, and that's why we hired them. Veterans are experts at doing that. Beyond anything else I've ever seen working in the civilian world, that is something that we bring to the fight. And for ZeroEyes, the fight for us is the next mission of let's do something proactive about gun violence here in America. And that, like I said, that resonates really well with our veteran population.
Appreciate the feedback, Kieran and John. Mona, I want to ask you, for in a sense of the how does an organization come to the conclusion that SkillBridge is right for them? The reason I asked that question is, I think at a higher level, look, there's multi-levels. There's Fortune 500 organizations and mid-size and smaller, which are a little bit more nimble. We got the nimble crew here, which allows approval processes to work quicker. Right. So there's red tape, I know, in corporate America and so many different levels. So how do they figure out if it's a good fit? And maybe where does it get stuck? And how did they come to the conclusion that SkillBridge is right for them?
Well, for the larger companies, I would say it's probably safe to say they all have some sort of traditional internship program. And if they understand how well they have acquired talent through traditional internship programs and think about, their needs for diversifying their talent pools and their workforces, and think about just kind of tweaking that model a little bit. Once they can get past the risk of this and understand that essentially, this is risk-free because the service members are employed by DoD, they're fully insured, they're fully covered. There's no a conflict with Fair Labor Standards Act or anything like that. They understand that this is a way to, John's point earlier, really help service members make the actual transition, acclimate into a new company culture, really have a little bit of time to understand, just organizational structure and reprogram language a little bit from, military lingo to civilian employment lingo. And really it starts with one, whether it's a Fortune 500 or a small business of 50 employees, it's truly starting with one, not trying to boil the ocean, not trying to fill every single requisition or jobs in every single business lane, but starting with one, having a framework in place that ensures that there is actual work for them to be a part of, there is somebody to serve as essentially a mentor along the way, and that there is a requisition that they are being looked at to fill at the end. And again, regardless of company size, it's starting with that one and then seeing the value of that person. Again, understanding the person versus, the perception. And that's what we've seen turn into success. So I won't name the company, but I will say one of the Fortune 100s that we work with, it took them 7 years to get through their legal their legal processes
That's
to
it?
approve this. Yeah, 7 years. So that's, I mean, I would say that's persistence. We had a champion in that organization that was not going to let this go. And sure enough, after 7 years, they started, I think, with maybe 4 service members in the first year. And they're somewhere upwards of 50, 60 fellows each year now, because again,
Wow.
one business unit started, word spread, the other business units were saying, how do I get those? How do I be part of this? We have other, Fortune 50 companies who are hosting over 100 fellows alone every year. But then again, for the small businesses where there aren't the legal hurdles, sometimes there just aren't as many resources for talent acquisition, where it's just not accessible from a resource standpoint to, again, to do some of more, to practice some of the hiring, practices that some of the larger companies are able to do just because of resource restrictions. So again, it really is helpful on both ends, whether it's a heavily resourced, massive size company or a small business that may have fewer resources. There can be a fit either way, but at the end of the day, it's really getting away from the traditional talent practices and really thinking about the company needs and the candidate as a person. And I'll say that we also have a program for military spouses and military caregivers to go through fellowships. It's a slightly different model, but it's a 6-week model, because they're really ready for employment now. They're not, in a transition window out of military service. But, we pay them a stipend. We do have them essentially covered by a third-party staffing agency. So same thing, there's no liability, there's no issue with, again, risk or anything in that matter, but it's right sizing employment. And when you think about all of these relaunching programs that have been happening for years to get women back into the workforce or working with, formerly incarcerated, whatever it is, it's the exact same thing. It's getting past the traditional perceptions, getting to know the person and hiring them for the right job at the right time. And so what we see often with both military spouse and the caregivers is that they start in what is meant to be a 6-week fellowship. And about 2 weeks in, the employer says, can we just hire them now? Or do they have to be in this fellowship role, for 6 weeks? And because it has a little bit more flexibility than SkillBridge, it becomes a direct hire after 2 weeks.
And I appreciate that feedback there, because I think, from what you said and what we know as well, it takes just really good internal leadership to take that stake and run inside. And thankfully, I know some of these people on this call and the great leaders that are there for some of the logos that are out there and the leaders they are in the Philadelphia community of running up and down the chain of command, and how they've done it in the past. And I think that's just any new initiative is, how do you sell the value proposition inside when it's a new initiative, and how far it can get there, and show some cases and case studies and everything like that. So I do appreciate sharing that story of 7 years. I'm a little bit surprised that you stuck it out. Like, I don't know if I would have, but it's important to be there with everybody. And if the intent's there and it's just a legality thing, then it makes total sense. John and Kieran, a question for you guys is, what is the process to make sure that you officially launch a successful SkillBridge program? So basically, anybody can want SkillBridge. Anybody can say, hey, let's do it. What do you have to have in place to make sure it's going to be successful? Kieran, we'll start off with you.
Sure. Yeah. So, for us, it's really, I think right, you have to work with someone who's SkillBridge approved. So that means they have to be approved by their chain of command. There's a process, on the service members' end to make sure that they're good to go with that. But once they're SkillBridge approved, you have to be, from an infrastructure perspective, you have to be set up to provide, some sort of an experience to them where it's both beneficial for you and also for the service member. For us, the most challenging aspect is figuring out a role that someone can, basically jump into from day one and then add value. I can tell you that our initial sort of SkillBridge cohort, we had made assumptions around certain ranks and MOSs and backgrounds and that kind of stuff. And largely our assumptions were wrong. We ended up hiring people into roles other than their background would suggest, and that's a good thing. So I think you have to have obviously some flexibility when it comes to managing a program that's living and changing day over day. And then at the end of it, you have to be willing to hire people. Like that's the biggest that is the biggest complaint that we hear with folks who are going through the SkillBridge program, particularly folks going to bigger companies, where occasionally companies will use them just as an intern and just to sort of get like a letter of recommendation, and they say, hey, good luck once you're done your SkillBridge. At least with Zero Eyes, we don't bring someone on in SkillBridge unless at the end of SkillBridge we're willing to commit to hiring them. So it's finding that right fit, setting them up for success, bring them to as many different things as possible so they understand kind of what they like or what they don't like about working at a small technology company, and then giving them opportunities to shine so that we can highlight that to the board when we do have to go and make hiring decisions. Kick it over to John.
Go ahead, John.
Hey, thank you. So one of the things that we found that was beneficial, because you can have up to a 6-month program, we developed a 6-month internship program that we can then take and shorten durations in each category of what we want them to spend time in within our company. Generally speaking, that's spending time with either spending time in the field as a superintendent, understanding the process, maybe spending a little bit of time with the project managers to understand the process of contract writing and things of that nature. So it depends on how long they're with us, so we can adjust that schedule to make sure that they still get exposed to each one of those, I'll say, quadrants of time that we have. It just might be a little bit less time. You know what I mean? So if they have a 6-month program, they can go through the full piece of it. If they have a 3-month internship with us, we can still expose them to those pieces, just a shorter duration of each one of those pieces. So what's been successful for us is having that I'll say guide or training program so that they can see what they're going to be spending time and exposed to. And then we have had feedback where it was like, listen, I want to stay in the field the entire time. Can I just not be involved in the office piece? And if they don't want to be a project manager, then we keep them out with the superintendent to spend more time focusing on those skill sets. So having a program in place is extremely valuable. And then once they're and as part of that, we partner them with somebody within the organization who's on a senior level. Actually, both of our most recent 2 interns were paired with our VPs because they happen to be working on projects that those VPs are running. So they got really good mentoring and exposure from one of the senior level people in the company. If it's not one of the VPs, it's one of the senior project managers or the senior superintendents that we partner them up with. And ideally they're a veteran or within the veteran team within the company. So we have veterans we have veterans in different client sites spread throughout, without the tri-state area. So it's good because they can get exposure to different places.
Yeah, so I'll go around with Mona, Kieran, and John as well. And I guess, and Mona, you might answer for all of us. That's on here. Is do people what do they have to be in person or virtual? Is it a little bit both? Things have probably changed over time, but what is the model right now that's successful?
Again, right now it's hybrid. So it really depends on it really depends on the employer need. And it really varies. I mean, obviously during the pandemic, everything went virtual, whether that was the traditional model or not. And so it opened up an opportunity for, quite honestly, a bigger talent pool to participate in the program. Again, originally, SkillBridge was limited to within a 50-mile radius of the assigned base. And then that expanded to TDY, eligibility. But then with the expansion into the virtual world, it went even further because, again, TDY was not necessarily feasible for everybody to go through SkillBridge because there was still the need for housing. Again, a temporary relocation, that part is not covered if somebody's TDY. That's kind of their own investment. But again, we see the models working fully in person, fully remote, and then hybrid. for military spouses and caregivers, that has been a narrative for a long time. And honestly, workplace flexibility has been, a conversation for years, not just for military spouses and military caregivers, but for some in the workforce in general. And so it's really kind of advanced that narrative. It's been a little bit of a silver lining to the pandemic for a lot of workplaces to see how well and how productive teams and employees can be either fully virtually or in a hybrid model. What it's also doing in terms of having the remote model is it's helping with retention, especially with military spouses and caregivers. If there's a relocation, they can keep their job, or if they're not able to keep their job with that particular company, they can typically stay in the industry. So
to that point, I want to make a little asterisk on there for anybody on this call that is in the veteran space as we do, because we don't cover the military spouses because of not having a ton of bases where we are we wouldn't fulfill that mission well in our community. But anybody there, please get with Mona if your organization wants to do more with military spouses. Now that everything has kind of come to head in the virtual world and stuff. Kieran and John, I'd like to know on your end as well, because you guys are a smaller organization, probably never had too much of a hybrid model or virtual model, but maybe I'm not correct on that. John, why don't you start first? What's easier for you because of your type of organization?
Yeah, we're pretty much 98% on site. You can't build stuff if you're not there. So it's kind of hard to put drywall up if you don't have people there. So we have a small group of people that we actually just recently started talking about because we have some support roles that don't specifically need to be on site, whether they can be a hybrid type of role to give us, to Mona's point, more options and expanding the pool of candidates. So for the internships, so for SkillBridge specifically, we are strictly 100% on site.
I can imagine. How about you, Kieran?
So we're actually a little bit opposite, and we were hybrid even before the pandemic. Just as a tech company, that's one of the things that we had to be sort of prepared to do that. As far as our SkillBridge candidates go, I want to say that they're largely hybrid as well. We have one or two folks in the Philly area, but the vast majority of them are spread out all over the continental U.S. And then Alex, I also wanted to talk for a second about military spouses. So we're a huge believer in that as well. I would say that we probably have 10 or 15 military spouses on the team, or former military spouses on the team. Really big deal for us. We are trying to get more involved in that. So thank you for calling attention, and Mona, you as well. Thank you for calling attention to that. That's something that we're a big believer in as well.
Yeah, absolutely. It's collaborating in many different ways. Even though we're called Greater Philadelphia Veterans Network, we definitely want to support the families that are transitioning out, the veteran spouses. So we're getting more into kind of networking, collaborating when people get out of the service, even though the military spouses, now that it's a whole virtual world, if we hear anything in Philadelphia, it's all about kind of collaboration and networking. I think we should just, dive in a little bit about probably the challenges. These are the last couple of questions on there. I think it's good to talk on the panel about some of the bumps in the road, lessons learned, and what are things that you've seen of some of the challenges. Mona, if you don't mind sharing some stories, no name of companies, of course, but what can that be? Is it leadership? Is it time? Is it commitment? All the above?
Typically, if there is a company who is ready to come on board, they have leadership buy-in. But I will say it is really understanding how to host an intern. It's really going back to, when you have an intern, are you putting them on real work, or are you finding busy work for them to do? And really for the fellowship program, it's making sure that there's real work for them to do, and that it is a bit of a time investment, again, because you are hosting somebody and really mentoring them for 12 weeks. So it's really having some structure in place versus having them show up and not knowing what to do with them. So that's where I'll say that we have, had not as many, thankfully, but again, I think that just came from, the first lesson learned turned into, okay, well, let's make sure that the employers truly are ready. And we do that by asking particular questions about, kind of their plan for the fellow, what is the requisition that they're looking to fill at the end? Does this seem to align with the candidate profiles that we're putting in front of them? And then that's been very helpful for us to basically say, you're not ready, this cohort, come back to us, to the employers, to say, we're not going to try to match you with any fellows because it doesn't sound like you're ready. And so it's really, coaching the employers along to make sure that they're ready. And I'd say that's where the challenges have been, because again, word of mouth spreads fast. So you don't want anybody to have a negative experience. You want to give a little room for that employer to grow and not have it suddenly go through the telephone, lines that is not an employer of choice because they weren't ready. So, we take on that responsibility as well and really want to make sure that they're ready. On the flip side, I will say that there has been a lot of growth on the employer side to really understand why this is valuable and why this is helpful. And the brief version is that there was a major firm that had offered a military spouse a very entry-level role just based on what the resume looked like. That offer was declined. The spouse ended up going through a fellowship program with that same company and landing a role 4 levels higher at twice the salary. So, that's when the company said, okay, this is where we should be, this is how we should be acquiring talent, is by, again, investing in taking a little bit more time to get to know the person. Because now that we've been in place for 7 years, we have a little bit more longitudinal data to see, better retention rates, better speed to promotion, lengthen the industry at large. So it's been good. But short version, sorry, I went on couple tangents there, but short version is challenges other than legal have been truly understanding, the preparation involved in having a good experience on both the employer and the fellow side.
You mentioned something there, Mona, which is interesting because I find it where no fault of anybody, it's the value, right? So we're both aligned of what we do with our mission. And sometimes we get employers saying, hey, we're looking to hire some veterans, and it's the lowest position, right? So, not to name names, and I don't want to be kind of canceled for saying this or anything, but at the end of the day, some banks traditionally have said, hey, we're looking for tellers. Just kind of that mantra, right? They struggled getting tellers, so they come to the veteran base to fill those tellers. It wasn't meaning they're going to veterans to see the value. So in essence, the question would be, if you see that originally, do you vet that out, even if it's a big Fortune, whatever organization, a bank, and they say, no, we're looking to really get the pipeline of tellers. Would you caution them, Mona, or how do you help them understand that might not be a good fit, or they might struggle?
Well, what we do is we make sure that they understand our traditional demographic for our SkillBridge program is really more mid-level managers and above. So if they're looking to hire tellers, we're not going to be able to help them. This is not going to be the right fit. And again, kind of using your anecdotal, example here, so we will be honest and say, you're not going to be satisfied at the end because these people are not going to accept jobs with you because you're looking at something that's really underemployment for them. And this is to right size employment, but also make sure that there's a values alignment with the candidate and the company. So, again, our program is not necessarily extremely high volume. I know it sounds like a lot because we're putting 1,000 through, but we're doing that with 20 program managers, a huge staff who are really working individually with every single fellow and company to make sure that we are able to do as much as we can to get ahead of issues like that, Alex, to be able to say, this just isn't going to be a fit. We're really sorry. We'd love to help you hire tellers, but let's try doing it this way. Like, let's take you to an installation where we might have more of a pipeline that is a match for that level job.
And last question before going to Kieran and John on a similar topic is the struggle that I think our community has always had about mid-level positions, because sometimes it's rank, sometimes it's age. So when you translate, how can companies understand what mid-level looks like? Is it 8 years in the military? Is it by rank? I know nobody wrote the definition yet, but if we put a little meat on the bone, that would help.
Well, it's interesting. So I was at the SHRM Inclusion Conference this past week in San Diego, and then there's kind of a military advisory committee that's been formed to really talk about how do more HR professionals get trained on understanding the value of military connected talent. And it's like, stop writing down that you have to have 2 to 3 years of experience or 3 to 5 years of experience, or, stop getting stuck on a number of years of experience. It's really taking a step back, not writing a job description based on what you think you need, but thinking more about the attributes of what you need to fill that role. And then really getting to know, again, the person and their experience that they bring. If you need somebody who, at that mid-level, who can make decisions, lead a team, that has project management skills, then look at the attributes and those types of skills versus what was their job in the military, because typically that's going to be irrelevant. And then, regardless of how many years they served, can they manage a project? Can they lead a team? And, use more of, kind of a storytelling version of, use more of an interview practice that allows them to tell stories so you can get a better sense of what they've done, other than try to say, if they were in the military for 8 years, then that equates to X number of years of experience.
I appreciate that. Kieran and John, we'll go with John first. How many years experience typically has worked for you when you're hiring, when you're looking and you're saying mid-level or entry level, what have you guys found, early on as kind of a little bit of a sweet spot for your organization? And what recommendations you have for others on how to find that?
Yeah, so I would echo what Mona said in regards to identifying what you need the role to do and to see if that person's skill set can accomplish it, and then fitting them into where they are in the progression of getting there. So I'll give 2 examples. I have two full-time previous SkillBridge interns. One was an ABCB. He had construction experience. He ran equipment. He generally knows how to build things. The other guy was the other gentleman was a aviation mechanic, but had done construction previously before he went into the military and wanted to get into construction. So one of my favorite expressions is you can't coach size and you can't coach motivation. So he's motivated and he wants to be in construction. He wants to take classes. He wants to learn about construction. He came in a different role and position because he didn't have the necessarily background experience, but he's not that far off of where that guy was because he still had life experiences. He still understood what a schedule was. He had personal skills that he can interact with the the foreman on all the jobs to let them know what they needed to get done. He had confidence in himself because he went through 4 years of the military and learned that you need to be able to speak and you stand up straight, and he represents the company in a very professional manner. So he's still a middle manager. They're both middle managers. They had completely different, I'll say, experiences specifically related to what we do, but they had equal experiences when it came into being a manager, managing people, having, led teams and so forth. So I like what Mona said. It's hard to just put a number and say you have to have done this 3 times. Like you can learn a lot if you're doing, depending on what you're doing, you can learn a lot in a short period of time. So it really, it's really, in my mind, it's important to keep your mind open, and especially for people who don't have military background, to keep open the idea that these people have done a lot of things that are very applicable to what you're looking for them to do. It just doesn't say I did X, Y, and Z. So I don't know if that overall answers your question or not, but that's where kind of we've come in with regards to where middle managers come in and where entry level people come in. So again, entry level people can come in, but they don't, that doesn't necessarily mean that they have the same years of experience as somebody else. They might know nothing about construction, but want to go into construction, and they need to go right up all the way through the ranks because they haven't done anything in that regard.
Thanks, John. Kieran?
Yeah, I mean, I'll preface this by saying, Zero Eyes was founded by 4 E6s. So we do not give a shit about rank, just to be really, really upfront. For us, it's what can that service member do to come in and add value. in general, I would say more junior SkillBridge folks that we're working with are going to fill some sort of technician or program management or sales engineer role. Our goal is not to keep them in that role. Our goal is to train them up and get them into some place where they have a higher level of mobility to go into the company, go upwards in the company. We're a really high growth startup. We're 130 people today. We are going to probably double or triple size in the next year to 18 months. Our goal is to have SkillBridge folks come in and eventually run their own teams. And we'll staff teams appropriately underneath of them. Generally for the more senior ranks, if you're a senior NCO, if you're an officer, we're looking at more customer facing roles. So that could be anywhere from sales, marketing, that could be on the strategy teams, that could be in customer success. That's not a hard and fast rule. That's just really what sort of like junior officers kind of lend themselves towards is being a little bit more customer facing. Our goal is to help train them up and make sure they're comfortable doing that. These are not skills that are easily learned in the military, but I think that they have the right foundation to do that.
Yeah. So one of the last questions, for the panelists is, what suggestions do you have for our audience? It could be anything, any feedback, suggestions. Step one, what would you want to say as kind of a closing remarks for the SkillBridge in how they can do things? I'm going to start with you, John. Go ahead.
I would say patience. If you want to become a SkillBridge provider and approved through the Department of Defense, my experience was you have to have patience and persistence. So you got to continually follow up to make sure that it's moving its way through the chain. At least that was our experience 3 years ago. It could have changed, but just stay on top of it. And the second thing is, if you're going to do it, make sure you have somebody who within the company is a champion to make it successful. It's not going to be successful if it's somebody's, I don't want to say side job, but if they don't care about it, like I care about it. So it's passionate to me. So, and I drive the company, so I get to make some decisions like that. If you really care about it, don't put it in somebody's hands. If you're a leader of the company to say, take care of this, unless they're as passionate about it as you are, because I'm passionate about bringing more veterans into the company, and I'm passionate about helping them through that process. That's why I stayed on top of it 3 years ago to make sure we got certified and continue to do that and promote it with the job fairs that we go to. So it's that would be my advice.
Mona?
Exactly what John said. Have a dedicated person to the program. It has to be looked at as a project. You have to have a project manager for this specific project, somebody who is truly dedicated to it. I will say, kind of pulling on that thread of the patients and getting approved through DoD, let us help you. Try hosting a fellow through us first and see if it's going to be a fit. See if you're having success with it, and maybe you do that while you're going through the process. But again, there are definitely opportunities to try out the program without having to invest all of your resources into, instead of putting without having to put all your eggs in one basket, really. So I'd say, let us help you reach out, have some conversations with our team so we can help you bring one fellow in just to see what it's like to be part of the SkillBridge program. And then when you're ready, absolutely, become that provider, just see the value of the talent that you can bring in, but definitely have a dedicated person and or team to it.
So Mona, to share what you said, which is really important to have the dedication. I mean, I look at it like the same thing as technology. People want new technology, but they don't have a dedicated person to implement the technology. So everybody wants something, but there's nobody behind the scenes to implement new things. So that's what we talk about, good leadership and kind of the road path to success, because sometimes it's like CEOs saying, hey, we want to hire veterans, and then where's the road path to success for the leadership?
Right. Don't go it alone. Again, I mean, don't go it alone. You have two people right here in the local area who have obviously done really, really well with this and really understand and have invested in it. So, don't try to figure it out on your own. The frameworks are built. You don't have to reinvent the wheel.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like we could even have a collaboration cohort like once or twice a year with all those that do SkillBridge in Philadelphia, to probably do maybe a little even best practices. Kind of a big takeaway for me is, hey, might as well learn from one another around our area and community and share best practices on that. Mona, typically the title, before we go to Kieran, I know it varies by organization, for small, mid-sized companies, it's really C-level sometimes, but typically, where does it come from? Does it come from the, campus recruiting? Does it come from internship coordinator? Do they have certain titles of people that have done this before, or do you train the person and just hijack that role, that person?
It comes from any combination of talent acquisition for diverse talent to military affairs to, we're seeing a little bit more of that being combined in terms of military affairs and DEI. But again, sometimes it is from the social impact side, and sometimes it comes from the talent acquisition side. But at the end of the day, the talent acquisition teams have to be on board, because again, they're the ones who are going to be implementing this for their organizations. So it really varies.
Yep, I appreciate it. I know, Kieran, you got to drop off. I just saw that note here. So any closing remarks you want to share with everybody for kind of suggestions or get started or kick in the rear?
No, I think Mona and John covered it. Definitely having champion helps. Having a path to making an offer at the end of SkillBridge is really paramount as well. So you're operating in good faith with the SkillBridge candidate. So please feel free to reach out to me, everyone, if you have any questions. I'm always happy to help and put you in touch with our SkillBridge program coordinator, he's actually in Hawaii, but he does a great job. He knows the program really well. So thanks. I got to drop, but great to see everybody.
Go ahead, Kieran. I know you got to roll. Kieran just had a new baby the other week, so he's on his third in 3 months, it seems like.
It seems that way. All right.
Yeah, it seems that way.
All right. Thanks, Alex.
Yeah, see you, Kieran.
Thanks, Alex.
So I appreciate, this is the part, we have a couple minutes left. I want to be sensitive. I don't want to end on the spot, but if you have any questions, we put it in the chat here. I think Stacy, you had a question up here that was asked is, how long does it take to become an authorized provider through Department of Defense? And I think, Mona, you answered that question, through the Department of Defense, it can take longer.
It varies. And at one point, Department of Defense was slowing down the screening of applications simply because there were so many approved providers nationwide that it seemed that there was a need to kind of take a step back and just make sure that all of these employers were still active and, still actively participating in SkillBridge. But again, I can't speak for DoD as far as how long the process takes. John might be able to explain how long it took him, his company specifically, but I know that it's not, you apply today and you're approved next week.
I can't give you exact dates, but that's why I kind of said patience and persistency if you're gonna set it up and go through it.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear that, John. What were you saying?
I just said I can't give you an actual date or time, like how long it took us. I'd have to go back and dig that up. It was a few years back, but just have patience. If you want to do it, just be patient and persistent with getting it done. I got the sense that it's not the highest priority within the DoD's chain of command of having SkillBridge providers approved. So you just have to continually follow up with whoever your point of contact is.
Yeah, no, that's great. Well, I want to wrap things up as just on the final note. First, a huge thank you, kind of a virtual round of applause for our panel, since we can't kind of do it in that manner, being in person, but I think it's really effective when we've been able to do some of these programs virtually or not. So thank you to our panelists that are on here for taking the time, especially Mona from West Coast. I owe you one when you're down in Philly. So thank you for this great knowledge today. And I hope everybody got some great takeaway about, the SkillBridge program is very raw for our community. It still is. It's kind of still an underground area. But I think it's just opens up our eyes for that conversation to learn more, to do more. So we have the resources, the people here. We have the people that were on this panel. We have Greater Philadelphia Veterans Network that can field some questions and get some answers. And it sounds like we might do a follow-up as well to kind of do a startup on this as well. So one of the last things I want to mention is, as with any of our programs, here's our next program that's here. We have our Veteran Shark Tank that's coming up, our 9th Veteran Shark Tank. It's a national event. I'm actually here at the MIG conference to talk, but also promote, because they've been a kind of a collaborative partner. And we've had anybody from celebrity chef Robert Irvine, David Robinson, you see him here in the picture of judging there, NBA Hall of Famer, Naval Academy, but he rarely shows up. We are the kickoff of Army Navy Week here in Philadelphia. We sell out. We have 5 veterans that are going to pitch their business. If you're interested in sponsorship, please let us know. We've had Comcast and Google and some fantastic organizations and that are on here, Allied Construction, Enterprise, and so many others that have been really backing our programs up. So I appreciate your support. We're going to sell out. We're on pace to sell out by mid-November. With just coming in, and we can't put more people in the room. So every year we do sell out in this fantastic inspirational program. Thanks so much, everybody. We are at time. I'll give you a couple of minutes before you jump on your next call. Thank you so much, Olivia, for managing all this process today. And go Navy, beat Army.